Good morning. Today is Tuesday, May 31st at 8:30 a.m. Welcome to the Finance and Physical Resources Committee. Fellow commissioners, staff, guests, those watching at home, glad you're here. Let's start with public comment. Is there any public that would like to address the Finance and Physical Resources Committee this morning? Seeing none, I will close public comment. That will bring us to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Sparks, supported by Commissioner Womack, and we'll take any questions, comments, or discussion on the consent agenda. Right, seeing none, all those in favor of passing the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. That brings us to item number 3 from the Sheriff's Office. Al?
Action requested. Recommend to the Board of Commissioners to add 1 lieutenant, 2 sergeant positions, 2 additional vehicles, and to transfer $676,159 from the Administrator's 2022 contingency budget and appropriate $4,175 of estimated fee revenue to the Sheriff's 2022 general fund budget. The Sheriff is requesting the addition of 1 lieutenant, 2 sergeant positions, and 2 patrol vehicles to supervise animal control operations. This will effectively transfer countywide animal control operations and supervision from the Health Department to the Sheriff and increase the level of training, enforcement, investigative techniques, community outreach, and media relations. Implementation of the transfer will be tentatively effective July 1, 2022. The annual cost for the lieutenant is $150,812, and the additional cost for 2 sergeants is $260,560. This request is to transfer 50%, or $205,686 of those costs, as the positions will only be filled 1/2 of the current year. 2 additional vehicles are required for these 3 positions. The cost of the 2 vehicles, $108,500, will be absorbed in the Sheriff's 2022 general fund budget. In addition to the position costs noted above, the following costs are included in the request. $185,380 fourth quarter operational expenses previously in the Health Department budget will be transferred to the Sheriff budget. $146,278 transfer of 6 existing ACO vehicles to the Sheriff. $142,990 equipment, body cameras, consoles, and uniforms.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Bolter, supported by Commissioner Wooden, and we'll take questions, comments, and discussion. We'll start with Commissioner Antor.
Thank you, Chair. This is pretty significant, and I was just wondering, we've had this health department in control of this for the last, since I think the 70s is when we originally went from the sheriffs to the health department, and now it's going back to the sheriff. At first blush, this seems like a lot of supervision and a lot of cost up top. And I'm wondering about the, are we just trying to play catch up right now over years of being lapsed? I know there's been some issues with the prosecutor's office. Some of these cases have not gone well because of lack of training possibly. And I'm just trying to, when I'm looking at this, it's a lot of money. And I was just wondering, is it possible to use existing staff with the Sheriff's Department to absorb some of this? I think the answer is probably going to be no. But how did we get to this position where we're kind of doing a reach here at the last minute?
Why don't I start and give an overview, and then the Sheriff can fill in some of the details on staff. So when I started, we had these 3 positions on the position request list, and I basically asked that we put money into contingency for these because I wanted to have time to research it. I did do that. We did have an intern look at animal control statewide and nationwide for counties similar to us, and also met a number of times with the sheriff and undersheriff, and they did, to my satisfaction, justify the addition of these positions. So the county until 1978 did have the sheriff doing animal control, did have a animal control ordinance, and then the state started providing revenue to counties that did animal control enforcement through the health code. And so the county changed it over and then actually terminated, repealed the animal control ordinance and started doing animal control through the public health regulations. That revenue that the county was getting went away, I think, in 4 or 5 years, and we've just continued doing it that way ever since, even though we would argue at least that for a county our size, we believe it'd be much better to do this through the sheriff's department. I guess I look at it, I look at the addition of the 3 positions, and I'm saying that it's not as if we have it running perfectly and we have this big investment. It's more like we're catching up, as you said. So I think that we've underinvested in this. We haven't spent money maybe we should have been spending, and now we want to do that. So I view it definitely as more of a catch-up than maybe an addition of something we don't need. But really, I think the sheriff is best suited to answer your questions about why the 3 positions, what are they going to do, and that type of thing.
Welcome, Sheriff.
Morning, everyone. So just really specifically on those 3 positions, the positions are a lieutenant and 2 sergeants. So a lieutenant for the sheriff's office is an administrative coordinator, liaison. They would coordinate training, they'd make sure the right training happens, they'd have systems in place to make sure the right processes are being put in place. They would do logistics and overview, scheduling staff, making sure that there's coverage, making sure that the collective bargaining agreement has been complied to, and making sure all of that fits into the systems that animal control will touch, like the sheriff's office, general patrol, also the detective unit, also the prosecuting attorney's office, dispatch, the detective bureau in general. So that's what a lieutenant would do for the sheriff's office. That is a heavy lift right now in particular because it's being brought into a new arena for animal control, and so there's quite a bit of work, and we probably can't even do it with 1 lieutenant right now. We're going to need to have some help from the sheriff's office just to kind of bring that up to speed. The other 2 individuals are sergeants. A sergeant is a first-line supervisor. And so they actually do 2 things. One, they do those first line supervision kinds of tasks like coaching, monitoring, training, guiding, and walking beside somebody when they're doing their work and making sure that it's being done appropriately. But they're also well trained to be able to step up and fill gaps in the work when the workload exceeds the personnel that we have in place. And I think it's always important when you're assessing tasks such as this, no different than most sheriff's department things. These operations don't knock off at 5 and they're not off on weekends. So it takes more bodies to cover the shifts. So this is just 1 sergeant working at any given time, and it's not even full coverage for that sergeant. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit more.
That answers quite a bit. These will all be 3 brand-new people coming into the sheriff's department, correct?
Well, so sheriff's department's one of those places, and I'm sure you remember from your days, supervisors get promoted from within in a process. So they will come from our existing staff, they'll promote up into the supervisor positions. I'll have to hire somebody at the lower entry-level position and then get them trained to take on patrol officer jobs.
One of the questions I would have, I guess, is a big component of this is training. These people are going to all have to be trained. With 2 sergeants cover 2 shifts, and then the lieutenant will cover the day shift, I'm assuming?
Nope, the lieutenant is working when the lieutenant has to work for all of the tasks that they're doing, but the sergeants will cover for each other.
Okay.
So, yeah, they'll be working alternating days.
Is there an issue that we should look out for? Like, you know, if you're hiring from within, let's say a guy's got 20 years and he gets bumped up, that's 5 years. You're going to train him for 5 years, and then he's out. Is there going to be some sort of succession where we're going to keep training people? Is there?
You know, the hopes is, yes, that there would be some crossover training that would happen among all of the supervisors to help fill in for animal control, and vice versa. The animal control officers that are part of the sheriff's sworn staff are able to complete other law enforcement tasks. You know, we've talked about this before, but when we contract for services, like there's a clause in every single one of our contracts that says in an emergency, I can use any and all resources to manage through the emergency. So that would be the case in this too. We try to make sure that everybody stays up to speed to do the law enforcement function that they're supposed to do. But again, a lot of crossover training happens inherently when you have people in the same area and they work together in coordinated services.
That would be, I guess, the biggest question. Do we have redundancy? Is, if a sergeant's off that day, he's on vacation or something, are these guys on call for specific situations? Or we just don't want to have a gap?
We're not gonna have a gap.
Okay, very good. We can talk about this later too, about some of these other questions. And thank you very much.
Yeah.
Al, you had a
Yeah,
comment?
I just wanted to mention, I think you had said that the lieutenant would be the primary contact for the local units of government as well?
Yes, so, and again, it's very difficult for a first line supervisor who has tasks to do, operational tasks to do, to really play any kind of coordination role. So yes, outreach to the units of government, of which there are many. Every unit of government really will touch animal control, and managing a budget for that person. And you guys talked a little bit about social media. That is kind of a big deal, and it has to be timely and it has to be correct, and that lieutenant is going to be the person who puts eyes and ears on that that circumstance to make sure it's communicated in coordination with the sheriff's office policy and also with county communications and the animal shelter.
Anything else, Tom? Yes, Commissioner Morgan?
Just real quick, Sheriff, the licensing, the dog license that you get, that'll stay at the local townships or municipalities?
So there is no change in that coordination, although that is something our animal control officers will continue to enforce and encourage.
Okay, thank you.
So this is a piece that hopefully will increase response time if, for example, someone in the neighborhood has a dog that's attacked by another dog, and there's a situation such as that, they would call the sheriff's office, and the sheriff's office would be able to respond to something along those lines, correct?
So we are not getting additional operational people in the field to work the normal shifts. But what I am hoping for is better coordination and then more gap coverage where we don't currently have the resources that we may need at that particular moment, that we've been able to train sheriff's office staff effectively so that they can help. But there are still going to be waiting times. I want that to be clear, because we're not like doubling the animal control staff. There are services that are being provided, but there sometimes are more needs than people. So
But would this address something like that?
it helps by better coordinating it. It helps
Okay.
by having individuals fill in some of the gaps, but there are still some gaps.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, thank you, Sheriff. Any other questions or comments on this one? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. That brings us to item number 4 from the Administrator's Office and Fiscal Services. Al?
Action requested. Recommend to the Board of Commissioners to approve the following list of guidelines to be used in preparation of the 2023 county budget. The County Administrator Controller is directed to present a general fund budget that is structurally balanced and to establish the appropriate budget targets to achieve the goals laid out in the Board's strategic plan. To gain efficiencies and align the county's fiscal year end with state and federal sources, the 2023 budget will be a 9-month gap budget to reset the county's fiscal year end to September 30. Personnel, liability insurance, vehicles, and cost allocation budgets will be budgeted at the estimated cost for the shortened budget year, while other lines will be budgeted at 75% of the prior year's budget. Departmental budgets supported by state or federal sources will be treated the same as prior years. There will be additional general fund resources provided for requested new positions that meet a critical need or provide a vital service. According to the Capital Improvements Program policy, a minimum of 0.20 mils of the general property tax levy will be set aside for capital improvements for the 2023 budget.
Is there a motion to approve?
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Morgan, support by Commissioner Wooden. Just to clarify, this isn't changing our fiscal year, correct?
Correct.
All right,
Correct.
it's not changing our fiscal year. That is another potential discussion down the road. This,
Next item. Yeah, ideally, we would have had these turned around, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So this is the budget process guideline for this year, but this action doesn't change the fiscal year.
Correct.
And it doesn't go to the Board of Commissioners, even though it says recommend to the Board of Commissioners, because this item has an NA next to
Oh.
going to the board. Is that the way you both need it?
This typically just goes to finance.
Finance, okay. Just making sure everybody's on the same page. Any questions, comments, or discussion on the Administrator's Office Fiscal Services 2023 Budget Process Guidelines, and Commissioner Morgan?
Thank you. Like I say every year, I think, I'm really happy that we're setting aside some money for our capital improvement of .22 mils. That's a minimum, just to remind everybody. And, this is just to help with our infrastructure and how important that is. So keep that .20 mils as a minimum.
Thanks. Anyone else? We need a vote on this for the finance. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. That brings us to item number 5 from the Administrator's Office and Fiscal Services, which is a fiscal year-end change. Al?
Action requested. Recommend to the Board of Commissioners to approve a change to Kent County's fiscal year from January 1 through December 31 to October 1 through September 30, effective October 1, 2023. Per Michigan statute, MCL 45.201, the default year-end for counties with a population of less than 1.5 million shall be the calendar year ending December 31. MCL 45.201 also allows, by a vote of the Board of Commissioners, to establish a fiscal year beginning July 1 and ending June 30, or a fiscal year beginning October 1 and ending September 30. Staff recommends the Board adopt a fiscal year beginning October 1 and ending September 30, effective with the 2023 calendar year. This change will create efficiencies with the audit process, align the county's fiscal year end with state and federal sources, and eliminate the need to have separate fiscal year ends for different departments, such as the health department, for instance.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Support.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Morgan, supported by Commissioner Wooden, and we'll take questions, comments, and discussion on this topic. Yes, Commissioner Antor.
Thank you, Chair. How many years have we had the calendar year?
Maybe forever. I don't know. I don't know that it's ever been different.
Al, when you were at Ottawa, did you have the calendar? Or
We changed from the calendar to the October 1, I'm going to say about 8 years ago now.
was that something that you did out of preference personally, or was that a staff decision?
I instigated looking into it, but it was really a staff decision. You'll find the Fiscal Services Department would really support this because basically you're in essence, they're doing 2 budgets and 2 fiscal year ends, work for 2 fiscal year ends. And so it's a better, more efficient use of staff time. And we believe it's more transparent because the feds and the state are both on the October 1 year. And so as we present our numbers on our website for the public to view, we think it is more transparent.
Yeah, whenever I see something, I just wonder why we didn't do it years and years ago.
There have been those in fiscal that have wanted to do it for years and years, even up to 20 years, I'm told.
Well,
So,
if we're
yeah.
more efficient and we look more transparent, we are more transparent as a result, and the staff likes it, I don't see any downside, I guess. But other than the question is, why didn't we do this before, I suppose? But
I think the only downside might be that we will be recommending a change in the fund balance policy. We're not gonna have more money by doing this. We're gonna change when we have our main reporting date. Right now, when we say this is our fund balance, what we mean is on December 31, when we closed the books last time, this was our fund balance. Because we collect our taxes in September, our biggest month, as far as the most money, is going to be September 30, right when we report our fund balance. And so typically we would spend for 3 months, and the amount will be lower when we get to December 31. So it looks like we have more, but it's really just a cash flow thing. We don't really have more money. It's just when we're reporting, when is that date when we say this is our fund balance will be September 30 instead of December 31.
Yeah, that comes up every year. We always talk about that.
Right.
The appearance.
So,
All right, thank you, Al.
Commissioner Morgan?
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback on Commissioner Anthor, we talked about this for years. I think, it was my opinion that we had some fiscal directors that just wanted to stay with, the two budgets. So it was their preference. And now, with Dode in here, maybe we can do that. But long overdue, I think. We don't have to mess with two budgets. It just streamlines things, and this is a good move.
Anyone else? We will have to have our work sessions in the summer months, right?
August will be busier, probably 3 meetings, including the public hearing, depending. If, we're not sure whether we could pull off a late July public hearing. Right now, we're thinking it would be in August, though. But more time in November.
Just letting people know that that will be a piece for the commissioners to adjust to the work sessions we'd be said earlier. All right, anything else? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. That brings us to item 6 from Kent County Community Action. Al?
Yes, action requested. Recommend to the Board of Commissioners to approve the Kent County Community Development Annual Action Plan for July 1, 2022 through June 30, 2023, to appropriate $2,876,424 in revenue to the 2022-23 Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, Home Investment Partnership, and Emergency Solutions Grant programs, and to authorize the board chair or designee to execute the grant documents related to the plan and approve extensions, amendments, and increases to the grant appropriation not to exceed 15% of the original award. Kent County is qualified as an urban county, which makes it eligible to receive funds from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, for its 41st year as an entitlement community. The 5-year extended consolidated plan for July 1, 2021 through June 30, 2026 consists of a needs assessment, market analysis, and related goals and objectives, and is a prerequisite of obtaining CDBG, home, and ESG funding from HUD. The grant application, referred to as the Annual Action Plan, contains a description and budget for CDBG, home, ESG funded activities proposed to be undertaken between July 1, 2022 and June 30, 2023, including CDBG projects requested by local units of government. The application allocates $2,876,424 in funding that includes CDBG of $1,673,393, home of $1,004,315, and ESG of $148,716, and recognizes an additional $40,000 anticipated program income from the CDBG Housing Rehabilitation Program, and an additional $10,000 anticipated program income from the Home Investment Partnership Program. For the 2021-22 program year, Kent County allocated approximately $670,000 for public services and housing rehabilitation, which includes fair housing, senior housing counseling, and transportation with people with disabilities. $1.1 million for public infrastructure, including a new playground, basketball court, soccer field lighting, and new sidewalks. $1.6 million for housing construction and rehabilitation, and $680,000 for rental assistance payments for 129 households. Assistant Corporate Counsel will review and approve the agreements as to content and form.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Wooden, supported by Commissioner Sparks. We'll take questions, comments, and discussion. Yes, Commissioner Morgan.
I guess this deserves a little bit of comment. When you start talking entitlement programs, I'm always a little concerned they can go away, but just wanted to state, with this CDBG money, it even survived the budget cuts in the Reagan years. So it's been a pretty solid program. But just keep in mind, with all this entitlement money coming in and stuff, that it could end. And just keep that in mind as we move forward. Thanks.
Yes, Commissioner Antor.
Regarding the CDBG, my issue with that every year is kind of not allowing the local municipalities to use it where they have the most need. Sometimes there may be something regarding public safety or something oriented, but they can't use it because it doesn't fall within the right neighborhood. To me, that's kind of backwards. We should let the locals decide how to spend that money. And that's always been kind of a tug of war, and it's been a moving target over the years. They may need some sidewalks in a particular area, but it doesn't qualify. But they can put a sidewalks in a place where they don't even have sidewalks because it qualifies. And that's what I see that happens with that over the years, and it's very frustrating for the locals. This is taxpayer dollars. I say let them spend it how they see fit and let their local constituents determine what they need. That's why I've always been I like the idea of helping them out, but then we go ahead and screw it up by saying you can't do what you need. So that's my only comment. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Wooden.
Thank you, Chair. Just to piggyback on that, as someone who's worked professionally with CDBG and home funds from other communities, one of the things that I can at least shed light on this is part of the reason those restrictions exist is because when in its initial inception, when the Community Development Block Grant program was created, I believe in the Nixon years, many communities that received them, because those restrictions weren't in place, were using dollars that were purposed to benefit low-income people directly, and were using them to build amenities and infrastructure in wealthier neighborhoods. I think one example was a tennis court being built in a wealthier neighborhood of a municipality that received these funds. Now, I'll be the first to say that anytime you have federal restrictions and federal rules that come with federal law, they don't always fit within each community's needs, and it's hard to match those together. But I would say that while that creates frustration, it is done with the purpose of ensuring these dollars benefit the low-income persons they're purposed for directly, and to ensure that public benefit. So I understand the frustration, but I do think the context is important within when discussing these funds. Thank you.
Hey, anyone else? Yes, Commissioner Antor.
I agree with that. Probably did happen back in the day, but I would say we just have to limit this to infrastructure needs and not parks and tennis courts. But as long as it's infrastructure related, I think that would be something we could tag on, because infrastructure will generally help everybody in that area. So that would be my only comment.
Hey, anyone else? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. That brings us to item number 7, Kent County Community Action. Al?
Action requested, recommend to the Board of Commissioners to accept and appropriate $684,319 to the 2022-23 Kent County Community Action Fund, and to authorize the board chair or designee to execute the documents related to the funds and approve extensions, amendments, and increases to the grant appropriation not to exceed 15% of the original award. Kent County Community Action has received notification of its pending allocation of funding from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services as part of the Department of Energy Weatherization Assistance Program based on prior year's allocation. This marks the 49th consecutive year of funding beginning in 1973. Kent County Community Action has weatherized over 8,245 dwellings since the inception of the WAP in Kent County, and expects to add 94 dwellings with this funding. The allocation of $684,319 includes funding for administrative, supportive, and technical training expenses, as well as funding for labor and materials and health and safety measures installed in customers' dwellings. The grant period is from July 1, 2022 to June 30, 2023.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Womack, support by Commissioner Sparks. We'll take questions, comments, and discussion. We'll start with Commissioner Bolter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Susan's here. I have a couple questions on this weatherization program. So one of our colleagues has a lot of constituents, our colleague who's not here today, That the flyer had the wrong phone number on it a couple of times. Did that get remedied?
It did get remedied. We put on the phone number that we were giving through Ring Central, because we had just switched over to Ring Central, and we didn't know that that was the wrong number. So it has been remedied, and
Okay.
we've gotten the word out.
Okay, and the application process, how long does it typically take if from the time I apply to the time I receive the funds? We all know getting the workers in to do this is a long time too, so how long
Right.
does the process take?
On average, it takes about 257 days
Wow.
from application to completion of the job.
Is there a reason, what are the reasons for
Well,
that?
for one, there's a staff capacity issue, and we're hoping to remedy that. But right now, we're full to capacity of what we've been allowed to hire. And then the other one is that we currently are in a materials crisis. We're waiting 6 to 8 weeks for refrigerators. We're waiting on lumber. The prices have gone up.
Right.
The foam insulation has gone up like 333%. And so it doesn't meet the standards anymore
Okay.
of being a savings to investment ratio. So we've had to go through materials and figure out what we can substitute. And maybe like for the sill insulation, we've had to go back to regular insulation, not the foam, which is more efficient.
Right.
And so what happens is that did Jenny send over the heat map? Can you show that? Oh, it's included.
It's in the packet.
Oh, okay. So in the heat map, you'll also see, that's only 826 applications that we were able to pull the data from. But in the application process, what we have learned is that we need to go out and see if the home is eligible, not just the client, because the client makes the home, the dwelling eligible. But if there's issues such as asbestos, knob and tube wiring, water in foundation cracks, those types of things, we can't weatherize the house. We can't seal it up with things, and ferocious dogs, drugs. There's a whole list of 20 things. So what we do is we go out to the house and we do a pre-inspection. And we inspect the dwelling to make sure that the house can be included in the program. That takes anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks. I think we're 2 to 3 weeks out on those. I have 2 inspectors that do about 5 inspections every Monday and then 5 every Friday.
Okay.
So once they go through that, then we know if we can bring the people in for the application. The application, I'm about 3 to 4 weeks out with the staff that are doing the applications, so they get in line for the application. At that point, if they bring in all their documentation, we're good. That hardly happens. And we have 90 days from the date of application for them to get in their paperwork. And we have tickler file on our database, and we'll say, if you could get this in a week, we can get you going, and
Are we
it just
good
doesn't
about
even
giving
go.
people the list of things they need to?
Oh,
to bring
yes,
in?
we,
Okay.
we tell them on the phone when we're talking to them, and we also send them a letter.
Okay.
And then we also send a postcard a couple days before their application.
So there's no way to really tighten this up anymore?
We've tightened it up as much as possible with the pre-inspection.
Okay.
Because the pre-inspection allows us to know who really is going to be eligible. But we used to take applications and then go out, and it was 1 in 4 passed.
Okay.
So it was a lot of work that we were doing that, took away from our time to be really doing the completions.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
then, yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Antor?
Chair. You mentioned, I think currently or before all these increases, you were going with the expanding home? Is that in the homes or bat?
The what?
Were you using expanding foam in the walls of these homes, and then you're switching back to bad insulation?
Yes, we have to because we can't get a savings to investment ratio.
Well, that makes sense. I know the foam is really, really expensive. The R value is the same regardless of what you use, so why wouldn't we always use the cheaper of the two? Is it just the application that's easier with the
It
expanding
is,
foam?
for the sills.
Okay. I get, so you have to do the math and see which makes the most sense as far as,
Right, and we use a tool, that's given to us by the Department of Energy. It's called the National Energy Audit Tool. And, it takes about a day to put in all the information into that tool, and then it will spit out your results. And if you have a 0.9, you can't install the measure because every measure we install has to have a 1.0 or greater for our savings to investment ratio. And that's where, years ago, we got to do priorities, and we could go in and we had great inspectors, and they could just say, you know what, we need this, this, and this, and do it. But now it has to have the savings to investment ratios.
it's kind of an odd deal because even people that are building new homes, they're finding they can't really afford the expanding foam. It's just too expensive. And yet we're putting it into really old homes. It just seems, at first blush, it's kind of a overkill, but we're talking about the cost of application. It's easier to get the expanding foam into those.
Right, especially when you're in a tight space.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Yes, Commissioner Wooden.
Thank you, Chair. Few questions. First, just for the record, could you remind us what the income restrictions are for this program?
Yes, it's 200% of poverty for the Department of Energy funds. The KCSM, the millage funds, go up to 250% of poverty for weatherization.
Gotcha. And the reason I asked that, just looking at the heat map, I do think it's important for the record to remember that there is an income restriction, and those meeting that income restriction tend to live closer into the core six, but also by the pure nature that they are more dense. When you look at a heat map, you're going to see more applicants in that area. Certainly, this calls attention to the need to promote this service countywide, but I do think that's important to remember. And I also wonder, obviously, it's not like you don't have enough on your plate, but wondering if we can get some kind of measurement of comparing the number of applicants who come through the core six and those who come through those other communities that are not in the core six as a percentage compared to their share of the eligible population due to the federal poverty level. If that makes sense.
It does, and I could ask the state if they can pull that information, because the database is made up and the state owns it, and so it's hard for us to get some information out, but I can ask about that.
Right, I just thinking to myself, that might be an even stronger measurement to show over-representation and under-representation of how it compares to the eligible population within the county. The other question I had, one thing, I do appreciate summarizing some of the obstacles you've faced when it comes to the application process, and I know that there's been an internal review to improve where you can improve.
Yes.
One topic that was discussed at KCCA's governing board was the fact that by our own policy, we cannot start spending funds even if the grant has been approved until the agreement's been executed. Could you share at least what's the typical timeline between the notice of approval from the state and actually getting the grant agreement signed and executed?
I believe it would be 6 to 8 weeks.
So almost 2 months of a 12-month grant process that we
Right.
have to put this on ice until we get that grant agreement, correct?
If it's part of, like, these funds come very normally 7-1. They're a 7-1 grant. And so if we can get the numbers, we can get this over to FPR and then on. But we will not have the contract through the state probably until second week of July, and it's supposed to start the first week of July.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's, for any of our new grants, it's probably 6 to 8 weeks also. But we're trying to, I really like the idea that the county will go to 10-1, because most of the grants that KCCA have start 10-1. And so we'll be looking really good at that point, but this is our 7-1 grant, so we have to come specifically for that.
Well, that makes, certainly I appreciate hearing that. The one thought comment I had more for our members on this committee and the board is maybe it is time for us to discuss some kind of policy change to allow very brief stopgap measures when we have grant funds that we've been getting for years, and there's just a delay in between approval and execution, where we can float those funds to begin your process and then have them reimbursed when they come through. I realize we are tight stewards of our cash flow, as we should be, but that just seems to me like a way to maximize the impact in a way that still, when it makes sense, when not necessarily risking our operating funds. We're just
Right.
putting them out there until the agreement's executed. So just a comment for the rest of us.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Hey, Commissioner Antor has a follow-up?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, real quickly, I don't know how accurate this heat map is, if it's dialed down.
Well, it's only 826 homes out of the 8,000 that we've done, but we could only pull the information from 2011 on.
Do any of these reflect multifamily or apartment complexes throughout the urban areas?
Not multifamily, because we can't do any units over 4. And so multifamily in the weatherization definition is 5 units and above. So those are all, they could be like quadplex or duplex, or single-family homes.
Apartment complexes are off the,
We can't do those right now. They're looking into that with the infrastructure bill.
thank you.
Commissioner Morgan?
I think I gotta jump in here.
Sure, please.
Just from a very simplistic point of view, some of the vintage homes are located in the city, right?
Oh,
And
very
that
much so.
Probably doesn't have an ounce of insulation. Now, you got some farmhouses out in our area, the same thing, but I don't have any heartburn over the map, okay? So, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Anybody else?
And I just want you to know, we have worked with the state, and the state is helping us to target neighborhoods with the expansion funds.
Hey, anyone else? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. That brings us to item number 8 from the Administrator's Office. Al?
Action requested, recommend to the Board of Commissioners to revise the use of $250,000 of the $10 million of funds appropriated by the Board of Commissioners from the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund from the Federal Coronavirus American Rescue Plan Act. Kent County will receive $127.6 million from the United States Department of Treasury pursuant to H.R. 1319-American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, of 2021, Section 603, Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund. The Treasury distributed 1/2 of the total to Kent County in 2021 and will distribute the remainder in 2022. Board Resolution 01272213 approved the uses of $10 million of the funds received to date from the U.S. Department of Treasury. The board resolution allocated $125,000 to Broadband Initiative Consultant Support. Based on responses from requests for proposals for consultant services and information gathered from other counties conducting broadband initiatives, it is recommended to increase the ARPA funds allocated for Broadband Initiative Consultant Support by $250,000 for a total of $375,000. Reallocation of 2 other items in Board Resolution 01272213 would fund the requested broadband increase. The Board Resolution allocated $680,000 for Kent County Convention and Arena Authority revenue loss, and $533,000 was determined to be eligible. The Board Resolution allocated $500,000 for ARPA consultant support, and the current contract for that service totals $163,000, with funds available for additional services as needed.
There a motion to approve?
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Womack, supported by Commissioner Wooden. We'll take questions, comments, and discussion on this topic. Yes, Commissioner Bolter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't mean to keep us here any longer. I don't love the fact that we keep hiring and expanding consultants, but in this case, I think whatever we can do to get this broadband thing moving as soon as possible would be amazing. We've got issues with kids trying to do schoolwork. We've got telehealth issues. We're at a crisis in mental health where the only appointment you're gonna get is a telehealth therapy appointment. And you've got, kids all over this county who can't even get in. So whatever we need to do to get this thing moving, I am all in favor of. And if it takes more, let's do it. But let's get some deadlines and some timelines in place with this consultation, with this consultant, because we gotta start taking action on it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Commissioner Antor?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just kind of curious what happened why did we get from one cost, all of a sudden it's skyrocketed up so much? And during the process of evaluating, did we go and take bids from a whole bunch of people? Do we only have one provider? Maybe that's a question for my good friend Cal. And I do realize a lot of this stuff the target's been moving all over the place with how we spend this money, and a lot of things were done in, I wouldn't say a rushed fashion, but maybe not as much due diligence. But this is kind of a significant jump, and I'm just wondering, did we look at other providers? Can we go back and look and see, can we go back and reevaluate that, I guess?
Hi, Cal.
Good morning, thank you. So to answer your question, we did issue a request for proposal, and we looked at, we received 6 proposals. We interviewed 3, and we had an evaluation committee who went through this rather extensively and have come to this. I don't know the origin of the original budget, but as a committee and the members who looked at the evaluation, it's really kind of 2 steps. Is to collect accurate data and make sure your data collection for Kent County is very thorough and good, and then design and implement a plan that's implementable. To do it right, the evaluation committee looked at this and said, let's get this done right. And this is the result of that, is the cost to get this project done right through the evaluations. That's where the source is coming from.
Okay. I trust this man 1,000% in all his decisions. I just wanted a little clarity here, so thank you.
Hey, Commissioner Wooden?
Thank you, Chair. Just to shed light on the budgeting differential from initial inception to today, as it was shared with, I had the fortune of serving on the RFP review committee as one of the members of the broadband subcommittee, and one of the things that was shared was the initial amount was budgeted because that's what other counties have spent for broadband consultant services, and most of them have been able to acquire with those funds adequate or consulting services for that data collection. And that's why if you look at the results of them, most of them have a lot of data, but not an action plan. And by adopting this amendment, we can get both, as Cal mentioned, the data and an action plan itself. So we were looking at what other counties were doing, but not necessarily looking at what counties got as a result of it. And, I think in the end, this decision is going to make sure that we do have the right folks in place to get both data and action. So, thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Green?
Thank you, Chair. Just quick question. I'm doing some back of the napkin math here. So we had allocated $680,000 for the CAA. 533,000 was eligible. So we're up 147,000 on that. 500,000 for the ARPA consultant. 163,000 was the cost. So we're up 337,000 on that. Does this all sound accurate, Al?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just trying to get a bottom line number here. So that means we're up 484,000 to what we originally allocated on the 10 million, minus the 250 additional for the broadband, puts us at 234 in the black toward what we originally allocated. Does that sound right? I'm doing a lot of that back of the napkin math here.
That sounds right.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we're still ahead of what we had originally,
Yes.
okay. All right, thank you.
And there very well could be other changes because we're thinking maybe the restaurant fee forgiveness will be less than what was budgeted. So you'll probably see us back as we look to reallocate that money as the picture gets clearer and clearer as time goes on, so.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. That brings us to item 9 for miscellaneous. Any Commissioner miscellaneous this morning? Yes, Commissioner Bolter.
Thanks, Madam Chair, for indulging me one more time. Just two quick things. On the KCCA stuff, it is just super frustrating. But I just want to clarify that these are federal requirements that we can't just wave a wand and change. Though they're tax dollars, we don't unfortunately have the ability to just decide how we want to do that, even though we think we would be better. So I just wanted to clarify that because there's certainly much different ways we would go about it, I'm sure. The second thing, and I missed last week's board meeting, but we're on a week anniversary of the most recent school shooting, and it was really tough to take my kids to school the next day. I was immediately on the phone. I reached out to the sheriff. I reached out to our chair. I reached out to our school superintendent. I know we're doing school safety officers, which is amazing, but I think the county is in a prime position to potentially convene something for our area. We touch mental health with Network 180. We have the Sheriff's Department. We have Kent School Service Network. We have the ISDs here. I mean, I know that, Al, you are meeting with the sheriff fairly regularly. If we can continue to increase communication, I did feel very comfortable with Forest Hill's efforts. I think there's always room to improve, but as we look at this, we've got to do something with the mental health of our kids. I'm raising 2 boys. This has got to change. So I just hope that we have the bandwidth to look at this where we can weigh in and convene if we can and help where we can. I'm not suggesting this is a county effort that we have responsibility for, but we are in a position to coordinate resources if we can, and I just want to make a plug for that. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else for miscellaneous? I know that we have phone changes potentially for anyone who has time to meet with IT in room 311. So I'm mentioning that. That happens now after this meeting, correct? And then there's other times where that's available too. Would you like to chime in on when that is?
Yes. Yes, the next time will be the next LHR meeting. So you can meet right now in 311. Tim Beck should be there with some help from IT, and you can meet again next week.
Okay. All right, with that, we are adjourned. The next meeting is Tuesday, June 14th at 8:30.